What's up guys, it's Cosmo the Coder here and welcome to this week's Humble Bundle review. This week it's the Humble Narrative Bundle, which I'm quite happy to say is actually a brand new bundle as compared to the last few weeks. So without further ado, we'll get rid of this and we'll take a look at our bundle, shall we? There we go. So first up, pay what you want for 3 games: Her Story, Read Only Memories and Sybil. Now, these 3 games are fairly well known, but I'll go through them each one anyway, just in case you don't know anything about it. Her Story is $4.99 on Steam. It's a full-motion video actual detective game where you use videos and other pieces of evidence to discover the story of a woman and basically a sort of murder mystery that's gone on and that she's involved in. It's got some very positive reviews on Steam. It's up to close to 90% on Steam and 86% on Metacritic. It's won countless awards for its, well, for various reasons. One of which is the actual actor that plays the woman in the actual game has won awards for her acting and basically the whole narrative. So definitely a good game to play. I can hardly recommend it. I haven't actually played it myself, but I have watched a playthrough of it. It's definitely worth a good look at, and for the price, even better. And I didn't even click on it. Read Only Memories. Now, Read Only Memories, sorry, is $14.99 on Steam. Quite expensive, but you know, I'm sure it's worth it. It's a point-and-click adventure game set in a cyberpunk sort of setting. Set in the future where you basically solve puzzles while exploring a sort of a pixel graphic-esque scene, as you can sort of see based on the video there. Essentially, it's involving artificial intelligence where you sort of watch this robot become sort of sentient. I won't sort of go too much into the plot because I don't know much about it beyond what's actually on the blurb, but also I don't want to ruin it for anybody. It's 80% on Metacritic. It's got some good reviews. That's my phone. I shall turn that off. Sorry about that. So, and again, another good game that, from what I've read of the reviews, is definitely worth a good look at. If you're into point-and-click adventure games, not everyone is, and I understand that, but definitely worth a little look at. Now, I'm going to pronounce this as Sybil or Sibel, I don't know. Does it matter? No. It's $5.99 on Steam. It's another full motion video game where you basically play a 19-year-old girl, which might appeal to most people, and who has recently become close to a man whilst playing an online game. Apparently, it's based on a true story. So how much of it is true or not is, I suppose, up for debate. But it's, again, another well-received game. It's not as well-received as, say, Her Story. It's in the 70s in Steam, on 71 on Metacritic. It's, well, as you can see from there, you basically play a girl with pink hair, even better. So essentially it's even a desktop simulator, if you want to call it that. It's literally a sort of experience that you sort of take place. One of the recommendations, though, is that you play it in one sitting with headphones and you sort of enjoy it as it would have been enjoyed if you were actually playing, well, taking part in the game, shall we say, experiencing the game. I think that's an important sort of aspect of it here. You have to experience it. Okay, moving on anyway to the green tier. Pay more than the average and you get 3 more games. Well, technically 4, but I'll address that in a minute. Broken Age. Now, Broken Age has got a bit of a reputation, shall we say, to its background, but I'll get to that in a minute. It's $18.99 on Steam. It's another point-and-click adventure game, and it's being brought up to you by Tim Schafer, who was involved in games like Day of the Tentacle, you know, the LucasArts sort of element of games. And this game was brought to you by Double Fine. It was one of the most successful Kickstarter campaigns of its time. It was record breaking. It's, what can I say about it? You basically play 2 different characters, and in a sort of story, and you sort of play out this story. It actually was split into 2 parts, which is kind of where the sort of problem that occurred. But like I said, I'll get to that in just a second. It's got quite a famous cast. It's got Jack Black, Elijah Wood. Is that his name? I've forgotten now. Let's see. Does it actually say? Probably not. But anyway, yeah, it's got an all-star cast. It's quite a good story. It's quite well received on Steam. It's about 70-ish% on both Metacritic and Steam. And overall, the game itself is pretty good. But the problem that actually occurred was when it involved its funding. When it was first released, it was only released. Part 1 was first released, obviously, and people quite enjoyed it. But it was over 2 years for Part 2. I think it was 2 years. Maybe it was 1 year. I think I should have written that down. But in any case, it took a long time for Part 2 to materialize. And as it was, when it did materialize, people were a bit confused because it simply was a sort of a reuse of assets and locations, and it didn't really add much more to the actual overall look and feel of the game. It was more story. It did finish the actual adventure, but people were confused, especially when they needed more funding to actually get the game second half, if you will. It's unfortunately kind of marred the whole Kickstarter thing for Double Fine and Tim Schafer. So much so, in fact, that when they announced Psychonauts 2, it kind of, well, let's just put it this way: a lot of people weren't very happy about funding another game for Tim Schafer. But we'll leave it at that, and we'll move on to the next game. 80 Days. Now, it's a bit difficult to explain what 80 Days is without it sounding kind of a mishmash of games. It's basically a management sort of strategy game set in the sort of the storyline of Phileas Fogg as he travels around the world in 80 days. You play his servant. Now I always get his name wrong. It's Passepartout or something like those lines. And you've got to sort of manage the finances, Fogg's sleeping habits, all that kind of stuff. Basically all the different parts of the journey. And you get to visit different cities and see all the different, monuments and artifacts and all that kind of stuff. And the simple idea is just to plan the journey as best as you can to get from point to point to point to point and travel around in 80 days. But you also have a sort of not really a multiplayer aspect, but you get to see what other people have done in terms of a journey. And as you saw in the video, it sort of shows you these sort of flags as each person, as it shows how each person travelled the world. It's got a load of interesting narrative and different stories, different characters. It's huge in terms of the narrative, and you can play it again and again and again and get different outcomes, different random events, different elements within. Very well received, high reviews on Steam, 84% on Metacritic, won awards, definitely worth a good look at. Alright, Steve Jackson's Sorcery. Again, this is another game by Uncle, which the same people made 80 Days, and it follows it in sort of the same sort of lines. It's $6.99 on Steam, and actually, I might not have said 80 Days is $6.99 on Steam too. Sorry. You basically get parts 1 and 2 of Sorcery, which is a hand-drawn graphic game where you travel in a land of monsters and magic, and it's all based on the books by Steve Jackson. It's basically part of a quadrilogy, and you get basically the first 2 parts. The third part is out, and it's also priced at $6.99, but it's separate from this bundle. And there's a fourth part coming out apparently later this year. Again, similar to 80 Days, it's full of narrative, full of different stories, different characters, different pathways, and you're able to basically choose different paths, rewind, go back to different sort of story arcs, different story junctions, and choose how you play the game. It's fairly well received on both Steam and Metacritic, and not necessarily as much so. It's sort of about the 60s, I believe. I didn't actually write that down, but from memory it was about 60 something, and fairly high, sort of 70s on Steam. But maybe not the sort of the strongest point of the bundle, but definitely a good look at if you're into RPGs and like the sort of graphical style, I think. Finally then, at the blue tier, $10 or more gets you Shadowrun Hong Kong. Now, Shadowrun games have been in various other bundles. I believe this is the first time for Hong Kong, the extended edition. The actual game came out last year, but the extended part came out about 3 months ago. So this is actually fairly recent. It's $14.99 on Steam. It's a cyberpunk RPG with turn-based combat. I'll actually play the video. just so you can see it. It's set in the year 2056 in the, ironically, Hong Kong city, where the city is actually controlled by corporations, and you sort of take part in a sort of generally a sort of conspiracy-esque campaign where you have to sort of explore and find and solve a whole sort of story and everything. It's extremely well received. It's got in the high 80s on Steam, 81% on Metacritic. The Shadowrun games, some of them can be a bit hit and miss depending on the sort of the fans, but it's definitely one of those independent games that has done really well for itself. It has a whole sort of fan base and is considered to be one of the best sort of what are called CRPGs in the last year or so, and it's won awards. So I think most of these games have won awards in some regard, so it's definitely a good price for this game and all the other games, to be honest with you. So this bundle I'm actually quite pleased with it, and I've actually bought it straight away because it actually is quite a nice bundle in terms of what you get, especially if you're into sort of puzzle-esque games or sort of less sort of platforming action games, more sort of thinking games. Definitely quite a breath of fresh air after the last few weeks with sort of the encore and the rebundles. Now there is no extension, as you can see. There's no more games coming, little box. So this is it for the actual bundle. So don't expect me to say anything else next week about it. The Ubisoft Encore bundle from last week, as predicted, has expanded with the expected 2 games, which is Splinter Cell Chaos Theory and Far Cry 3 Blood Dragon. Now both games, oddly, I can't find on Uplay, in Uplay's shop. I did a search, and I even did a search, tried to do a search elsewhere. Whether or not it's because I'm in the UK and I can't see them or something, I don't know. But I couldn't actually find them, so I can't compare prices to it. But I can tell you that both games are really good. Chaos Theory is the 3rd game in the Splinter Cell series. It can be considered by many as one of the best, as it sort of enhanced upon the previous 2 games. The previous 2 games are good, but this was when Splinter Cell came into its own. They improved the technology. They added things like ragdolls. They changed up some of the stealth mechanics, altered some of the AI. You know, you got a knife to do some fancy things like cutting into tents so you can go through them, cutting ropes, other stuff like that. So it was definitely well received, and I can heartily recommend it, even though it's actually over 10 years old, which is kind of scary because I played it when it first came out. It's definitely still worth a go, as if it still works on your system, because bear in mind it's an older game. There's no guarantee it will. Far Cry 3 Blood Dragon is another game that's actually exceptionally good, in my opinion. It follows alongside Far Cry 3's mechanics, and it basically takes them and utilizes them in a game whose story is sort of taken from all the 80s-esque action movies that you could come to know and love, and puts it in this ridiculously over-the-top storyline involving soldiers in the future, you know, laser guns, dinosaurs, all kinds of weird and wonderful things. It's as you can see from the actual trailer, it's completely ridiculous, and it knows it is, and it takes the sort of its humor and its storyline to the ultimate top. It includes 80s montages and all that kind of stuff. The actual main character is voiced by Michael Bain, or I can never get his name right. You know, the guy who played Kyle Reese in Terminator, and also was in Aliens, and I think at The Abyss and everything. You know, he's voiced by it, and it's extremely well written, in my opinion. You know, it's lots of fun, and that's exactly what the game is meant to be, fun. You know, it's ridiculous to the utmost level. Heartily recommend it. It doesn't need, as far as I know, you don't need to have Far Cry 3 to actually play it. It's actually a standalone sort of expansion-esque thing. Definitely worth a look at. Heartily recommend it. There you go, that's my review of it. I'm sorry, I'm completely distracted by this trailer. I've forgotten how ridiculous it is. But yeah, it's completely sort of 80s influenced. You collect like videotapes or cassettes or whatever you want to call it. So it's all ridiculously over the top. And I've said that before. Now, the other thing it does include that wasn't in the previous thing is some Intel credits for the Division, but I can't give you much more than saying that it basically gives you stuff to use in the Division now that it's actually out, as compared to last time when this bundle was released when it wasn't. So I don't know what it gets you or what how Intel points actually are, but that's what you get in the bundle. Alright, that's it. I'm going to stop talking. Thanks you for watching, guys, if this actually works. Yes, it does. As always, like and subscribe for more stuff like this. Just a little reminder that this Friday, the 3rd, is it? Yeah, the 3rd is the release of the Humble Monthly for June. I will be reviewing it on Saturday, hopefully, and also be doing a giveaway where I'm going to give away Rocket League and hopefully 2 or maybe more games depending on what's actually in the bundle and if I already own it. Thanks for watching, guys. Like, subscribe, comment, dislike, the usual sort of stuff. Let me know what you think, and I will see you next time for another Humble Bundle review.